So Planet City is a thought experiment. It's an exploration of what it would mean to house the entirety of the world's population, 10 billion people, which is the population projected for 2050, in a single hyperdense city as a means to return almost the entirety of the planet to wilderness, to return stolen lands and to create space for nature and other species we previously thought were beneath us. And what Views of Planet City has been doing is asking a series of artists to inhabit this world and to make work and to find stories inside this fictional city.
Views of Planet City is an exhibition that takes part within SCI-Arc, which is a cultural initiative that happens now every 5 years, presented by Getty. We got the grant and we were able to compose a team of artists, all faculty at SCI-Arc, led by Liam Young, whose concept of Planet City became the leitmotif of the show. And what Views of Planet City does as a group endeavor is it models an inversion of the discourse around planetary urbanization. Humanity retracting or retreating into one city, which then becomes almost like a riddle for us to solve. The very grouping of works between Pacific Design Center Gallery and SCI-Arc Gallery was very important for us, where we chose somewhat symmetrical organization on a fundamental level, having one research station as a kind of preamble, as an entry point to the whole show.
The idea of this imaginary world is that it's based entirely on technologies that already exist. One of the first things I did at the beginning of the project was travel around the world to visit sites of the world's largest renewable energy systems. All of the technologies that would really go into making Planet City a working model of the city and also entirely sustainable. And all we're doing in order to make this city work is scaling up all of these existing technologies that you see in these research documentaries to scales that are necessary.
The second floor, or the innermost space at SCI-Arc Gallery, we employ a different kind of typology. At Pacific Design Center, we have something resembling a ceremonial pavilion, whereas at SCI-Arc Gallery, we have the works dialoguing in one shared space and having the feel and the mood of almost a shrine.
What I wanted to do in the SCI-Arc Gallery was bring together John Cooper and Angelica Lorenzi to make work that is very much concerned with the cultural life of the city.
In the gallery, we're seeing a mobile architecture platform. It's a bicycle-powered apparatus for performing architecture anywhere in the city of LA and beyond. It's totally autonomous. It has lighting, architectural equipment for the production of architectural models, everything that needs for community participatory model making. This apparatus is specifically oriented towards the unbuilding of our existing cities, the harvesting of their parts, their redistribution, and then their reassembly in Planet City. This idea that everything is foraged and reused, recycled, upcycled. Planet City Spoils is a project of direct architectural action. We are not just illustrating a fiction or a possible future, but that we're enacting that future right now with communities in LA. This mobile architecture platform was fabricated in collaboration with Jimmy Lozama, founder of Reciclos, which is an activist bicycle fabrication unit. Planet City is a set of objects and forms, but it's also really a feeling. And I think when you walk into this space and into the light that Oficina.la was able to produce, preps you, makes you ready for the conceptual flights of fancy that the individual pieces take you on.
He's creating a system of parts and processes, and through these extraordinary workshops that have been enabled through this kind of traveling model cart, there is no grand genius vision here. It's all about negotiation and collaboration. What Angelica's doing here in the gallery is trying to construct a ritual space, a space of 3 different landscapes that she's been exploring through her own research. And she's prototyping a series of new ceremonies and rituals that might take place that would enable citizens of the city to connect remotely to those landscapes.
The work is supposed to be seen in a slow way. Take a moment and reflect. I'm looking at the part of the planet where people have no access, and I'm imagining what the future could be. How can we think about not only rewilding nature, but rewilding people? How do we reestablish a connection with nature, starting from the ground up? The objects that kind of like populate these 3 mounds are a collection of ceramic objects and 1 textile element. Help the viewer to kind of like immerse themselves even more into the natural scenario. Of course, it could be hard to think about not having access, not having physical access to nature, but I am also convinced that there are other types of access that are as valuable as the physical one. We are part of nature, that architecture is not only about what is built, but also what is not built or what can be unbuilt.
Getting to see the project of Planet City evolve from something that was really a extremely provocative, huge-scale, speculative thought experiment to this exhibition, Views of Planet City, which has kind of extended those themes and allowed other participants, collaborators to create more connective tissue between this bigger concept with kind of ground level, like lived experience and reality, and the actual city that we're in, which is Los Angeles. So the kind of site-specific factor of it, I think, is quite exciting. What designers will be facing more and more is how to navigate not just these registers of kind of aesthetic or even concept, but also of time, of what is the immediate kind of like day-to-day and the next 5 to 10 years versus the next 50 to 100 years. How to make these extreme and distant times feel immediate and close.
In the main theater space of the gallery, what we're seeing is a film set in this fictional future city. Particularly, it's a film exploring the festival of Planet City, to explore the life, the cultures and characters of this imaginary world. I developed, in collaboration with Anne Crabtree, a whole series of costumes that are worn by the citizens in this extraordinary 365-day festival. Part of the exhibition is a photo series where we see these costumes sited amongst the everyday landscapes of Los Angeles. And they're wearing masks that are made from Victorian taxidermy objects. And what they're doing is performing the roles of the beasts of burden of the past, where we used to mistreat or exploit animals for their labor. So Damjan's project is set out in that landscape beyond Planet City, creating a simulation of how these landscapes might recover, with the support of an AI that he's scripted, but also the support of a series of First Nation communities that have been given their land back and that have returned to stolen lands.
My installation is called Planet Garden, and it's comprised of a single channel projection and a video game simulation. In the future, artificial intelligence will become self-sufficient and it will be able to manage Earth systems for humanity. So the game is trying to ask this question: what happens to the planet after singularity? And singularity is basically this idea that artificial intelligence becomes superintelligence. One of the main aesthetic questions of the game is, what if AI was a forest? What if that level of detail and resolution that we see in nature is actually how AI will kind of present itself? The simulation of the game presupposes that energy production will not come from planetary resources, and that the resources will not also come from the planet, they will come from off-world. One of the really important points about video games is that they are not scripted and they allow for open-ended exploration, understand how do we tell stories about ecology that are not one-sided or that are not maybe naively extrapolated from current conditions.
Planet City is really a planetary scale project, and the only way to fully describe that story in its completeness is through the lens of a satellite network flying above the planet in orbit. So Jen's project is a film told from the perspective of 3 of these orbiting satellites, looking down upon the city as it changes and evolves.
Pink Earth is a film that is a cinematic portrait of our planet. The film charts the journey of the very first boat that takes people to the planet city to the very last boat, from the perspective of space through the lens of satellite images. The project provocates that perhaps the planet Earth would be rendered pink, seen from afar, through the future vertical farms that we might be producing our food from. So the tapestry tells also the story of Pink Earth and Planet City through one single long kind of scroll. Together with Adam, the exhibition designer, we came up with this idea that we could have a long, almost a corridor length kind of space. It really hits home that you might be a satellite kind of gliding through up and down. Without satellite images, it is really difficult to be able to capture that overview effect of what we're doing. And so all of this is inspired by Carl Sagan's idea of the pale blue dot, where being able to have that distance allow you to see things in a different perspective, and perhaps looking past the sometimes extraneous details that might stop us or that might be a distraction for us.
Science fiction cities began as models. So I wanted to work at that same scale through that same medium and extract fragments of the city and build them as our own movie miniature models. I'm interested in the ways that science fiction has always shaped our cultural relationships to the future.
Thinking through the ways that different artists approach cinema and approach the exhibition of cinema is something that's really important. And so for this show in particular, because it had 5 different artists, 5 different types of media, we really wanted to get into that history. To use this as an opportunity not just to show the models as beautiful as they are, but also to teach people how to read them and how to read this kind of project more broadly. This is the language of cinema, but how can we make our own version of those components that are ubiquitous across all filmmaking? We developed this modular system, all designed, prototyped, manufactured at SCI-Arc. We designed 48 individual 3D printed components to fulfill the different needs required by the project. But also central to the exhibition would be the mannequin displays, the lighting apparatus, and then upstairs, the cinema itself. Literally, the structure of the exhibition creates a narrative from the space that we're in now, the research station, up to the films themselves that are led by a parade of these masks. One of the constants throughout these 5 diverse projects is this ethereal pink glow that seems ubiquitous, like Planet City is pink, whether it be the hydroponic growing farms, right, or the grid of lights in Damjan's piece, or literally a piece titled Pink Earth, right, that this is somehow a trope that every single one of the projects picks up on. None of this is possible without the work of SCI-Arc students. And I worked with them for months to prototype and design and execute this whole project. And so when we talk about exhibitions as being pedagogical projects, again, for many audiences, the students are one of them.
It's a city, after all. But at the same time, it's not interested in the plausible or the pragmatic making of buildings as physical objects, as the ultimate endpoint of what an architect does. Rather, we try and suggest that there are different kinds of architects. It's all models of thinking that are totally native to a school like this.
Also, it's about forming new types of coalitions and power from the people who will be most impacted, and it's especially even thinking about youth and students, to be able to enact some of the ideas that are already here. It's not so much that we need as many new visions, perhaps, as more new forms of solidarity and democratic power.
It's an attempt to get us to think differently about what our futures could be. Because in many ways, if we close our eyes and we think about a hopeful or utopian future, those kind of futures which are based in a form of boomer environmentalism are no longer fit for purpose. They no longer operate at the scales that are necessary. So we're trying to introduce people to the idea that climate change is no longer a technological problem. Really, all of the systems that we've created across the last 10 or 15 years that we need to dig us out of these holes that we've created for ourselves are actually already here. And what's keeping these systems down is our own cultural and political biases, or a crisis of the imagination, not a crisis of technology. Actually, if we wanted to, we could start building something like Planet City tomorrow. And that's an extraordinarily hopeful and powerful place to be.